Coming in at number 5, we've got ASMODEUS. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got ASMODEUS, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of ASMODEUS killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, ASMODEUS would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. ASMODEUS is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank ASMODEUS for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abbasathebu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abbasathebu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell too. See, Abbasathebu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abbasathebu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abbasathebu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abbasathebu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abbasathebu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abbasathebu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey, do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebos. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages. Tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him. Boy oh boy, for a book meant to instill and reinforce faith, there sure are a lot of trials and tribulations, monsters, and mayhem. Coming in at number 5, we've got the Cherubim. A mainstay in the home decor of grandmothers and churchgoers everywhere, folks tend to love cherubs. They've got chubby little cheeks, lovely little wings, and a whole lot of resemblance to babies. Unlike babies though, cherubs tend not to scream and cry and crap everywhere, which might actually be part of their appeal. But these angels are not as they seem. Sure, they gained quite a bit of popularity in art that depicts them as lovable little lads and lasses, but that's not really what they're supposed to look like. A lot less people would want to hang them in their homes if they actually resembled the way they're described in some texts. So their quasi-human form is about the only part they got right. Otherwise, cherubim are jam-packed with terrible features that would probably give kids nightmares. First off, they don't have just one face, they have 4. One of a human, one of a lion, one of an ox, and one of an eagle. That's a lot of freaky faces. Add in 4 wings and you've got a wild and crazy creature. But the basic appearance of these things is just the beginning. Those who behold the cherub might notice that it always appears as if it's on fire, you know, for reasons. And apparently they were often accompanied by another indecipherable being. A half machine, half creature full of whirling crystalline forms, these interlocking wheels stared down upon folks with hundreds of eyes that covered their entire bodies. Imagine that, being visited by an angel, and instead of seeing a calming, serene humanoid dressed in white, you're greeted by some awful chimeric abomination and its pet crystalline wheel. Insanity. No wonder folks who claim to have seen angels went nuts. Although I think it would be pretty wicked if grandmas started putting art up of these cherubs in their bathrooms. Coming at number 4, Seraphim. Keeping with the theme of Ims for a second, now we've got another order of angels that are a whole lot freakier than we often give them credit for. Seraphim are flying serpents. What else do I need to say, honestly? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that folks don't often associate flying snakes with angels, but here we are. These winged, wiggly forces are meant to hover above God's throne, singing about how excellent and divine and fantastic he is, which is all well and good, but just think about that for a second. Why would God, the Almighty, the creator of everything and all that is good, need a bunch of snakes to fly around literally singing his praises? It seems like they're doing their best to convince anybody who might hear of it. Who else needs a PR team running around making sure that everyone believes they're actually really good? In addition to their sketchy job descriptions, they're just plain weird looking. They fly around with 6 wings sprouting from their backs, 2 for their actual airborne maneuvers and 4 to cover their faces. Oh, and also their feet. Yes, these flying, praise-ridden snakes also have feet. So are they dragons, or do they just have like little feet dangling out by their tails? Unless you personally plan on meeting some angels, we may never know for sure, but that image is not a good one. In some writings on celestial hierarchy, the seraphim are described as such. The name seraphim clearly indicates their ceaseless and eternal revolution about divine principles, their heat and keenness, the exuberance of their intense, perpetual, tireless activity, and their elevative and energetic assimilation of those below, kindling them and firing them to their own heat, and wholly purifying them by a burning and all-consuming flame, and by the unhidden, unquenchable, changeless, radiant, and enlightening power, dispelling and destroying the shadows of darkness. So if you've ever found yourself influenced by the shadows of darkness, good luck. You know, demons tend to do their best to influence good people to do bad things, but they can, usually be resisted. Angels seem to just want to destroy anything that goes against their vision of holiness. Food for thought. Coming in number 3, we've got the Watchers. First of all, any organization known as the Watchers is going to be creepy. That's just creepy names 101. Second, you know Noah's Ark? The story of God telling his chosen dude that he's going to flood the whole world in order to hard reset all the sin that's accumulated? Well, the Watchers can essentially be blamed for all that sin. This group of angels managed to fly under God's radar for a while and made their way down to Earth. See, the Watchers saw some of the beautiful women on Earth and found themselves unable to really focus on anything else. Wanting to marry these mortals, the Watchers rebelled against the rest of heaven and went down to Earth to have a good time. While there, they lived hedonistic, overly sexual lives and taught humans secret knowledge too. It's said that the Watchers were the first to teach people about weapons, which obviously ended up in brutal violence. Also, the kids they had with human mothers turned out to be a little abnormal. You might be conjuring up images of Greek demigods right now, but that's not the case with Christianity. Instead, these human-angel hybrids turned into 1,000-foot tall abominations and started killing and eating people. They also forced humans into slavery in order to produce more food, which, good stuff. Way to go, Watchers. Very responsible. Teaching these lower beings about weapons and makeup and then breeding them to make ungodly abominations. In the end, though, God did take revenge and lock these angels away, but damn. Not even the devil could come up with a plot to so thoroughly everything up. Coming in number 2, we've got Belial. If you're a fan of this channel, you've probably heard this name before. However, we don't usually talk about Belial in a biblical context. Now, we're talking about Basket Case, a classic. However, the surgically removed basket-dwelling monster got his name from this horrific angel. Fitting, especially when you realize what the original Belial got up to. Created right after Lucifer, he was one of the first angels to revolt against God, and that's just the start too. Belial led an army against Michael, resulting in untold amounts of carnage. Each army took 3 wins, and only during the 7th battle did God intervene because he wanted to make sure that Belial lost. For an angel to revolt against the others and then do unspeakable things against the others during battle, that takes a lot of power. And lots of terrifying evil too. Man, even the strongest from hell were once angels, eh? And coming in at number 1, we've got Raphael. To round it all out, let's discuss how even the holiest of forces are capable of the absolute cruelest of acts. Like, unimaginable torture that lasts lifetimes. I guess we already knew all that thanks to Dante's Inferno, but let's take a look at a very specific, pointed act of malice for a second. Raphael. Although he's not one of the named angels in the New Testament, he has become associated with healing and stirring the pool of Bethesda. However, just because he's associated with healing doesn't mean he can't bring the pain. Known for fighting the demon Azazel, he eventually triumphed over this force of evil. So what'd he do when he won? Did he banish the demon, purify its soul? Nope. He bound their hands and feet together, found a big hole in the desert full of rocks, and then cast the demon into this pit. Apparently, that demon waits there until the day of judgment, when he will then subsequently be cast into a pit of fire. Holy smokes, that is a hardcore punishment. I guess the demon deserved it in some way, but geez Louise, that's just gotta suck. I'm not sure if folks should find it comforting or not that these supposedly holy beings are so absolutely terrifying. Like, if you ever saw one with your own two eyes, it might have a Lovecraftian madness-inducing effect on you. Seriously, angels are scary. Coming in number 5, we've got Abizathebu. Fallen angels tend to have pretty wild names, so we'll kick off with a good one. Abizathebu, Abizathebu, Abizathebu. Keep saying it, I swear nothing bad will happen. While some angels fall from heaven and just chill in the sacrilege paradise that is hell, some have higher hopes for sure. Good old Abizathebu is one of those with goals. Aspirations, a day planner fully loaded with terrible tasks. After following Beelzebub in a grand exit from the Holy Land, he became quite an important demon in hell. Most hell dwellers choose to follow a certain demon or become part of a legion of some sort. This fallen angel has control over all sorts of imprisoned souls. Some say that this charge is both a privilege and a burden though, but I would imagine the same is true of all sorts of tasks in hell. There's much more to this demon though. He doesn't just remain in hell for all of eternity. In fact, there's a wild story about what Abizathebu got up to above ground. After falling from heaven, he roamed about Egypt, eventually causing a pharaoh's heart to harden. This act of evil inspired the pharaoh to pursue the fleeing Israelites, which ended poorly to say the least. This pursuit resulted in the pharaoh's army being crushed by the Red Sea. Abizathebu himself was imprisoned in a pillar of water and forced to uphold a pillar of air until a temple's completion. That has to do terrible things to one's mind, so I'm sure whenever this demon escapes, he'll be ready to wreak some vengeful havoc. You'll be able to recognize this angel turned demon rather quickly too. He has two differently colored wings. One is bright red. So if you ever come across an entity with two different colored wings, one being red, you can probably be pretty sure, reasonably so, that it is Abizathebu. Be careful and watch yourself, as he is the demon of pride, known to lead people astray. Coming in number 4, we've got Furfur. Don't be fooled by the somewhat silly name on this one. Furfur is to be feared. A great Earl of Hell, he commands 29 legions of demons that can compel all sorts of atrocities to happen. Take in that his name could be a corruption of the Latin word furcifer, which means scoundrel. We love a good scoundrel around here, but be aware that when dealing with one face to face, he will almost always come away as the loser. He's been depicted as all sorts of different things, from an angel to a fox to a winged hart, which is essentially an older species of deer, plus wings of course. In those forms, Furfur has been known to trick and mislead people, as he is a pathological liar. The imagery of a tricky fox or deer has been used in myths and stories all across the world. Apparently, if you compel Furfur into a magical triangle though, he will revert to his true form and speak only the truth. Whether or not you want his scratchy demonic voice telling you truths is a matter of contention though. Trickery and shapeshifting are only the beginning of this entity's power. Furfur can force love between a man and woman, which often does not result in desirable outcomes. The actual method Furfur employs to make this false love happen is up in the air, but maybe double check your intentions if you find yourself falling in love in the woods. Furfur can also whip up destructive inclement weather. Enormous cracks of lightning, tremendously loud thunder, and storms with rain and wind that put monsoons to shame are all under his control. So don't make him mad, lest you end up struck by lightning or drowned in torrential rainfall. If you summon this fallen angel, he may impart some knowledge upon you. Often this knowledge is of divine things and meant to instill happiness. So even though he is known as a demon, he's not all that bad. There are benefits to having him around if you can manage to avoid these storms and potential forced love. Coming in number 3, we've got Adramelech. Possibly an ex-angel, possibly a Sumerian sun god, Adramelech is worshipped by people around the world who wish to offer up sacrifices in exchange for power and wealth. Here's a fun fact: not only is he a chieftain of hell, he's also got a whole bevy of other interesting hellish responsibilities. Firstly, he's the Great Chancellor of Demons, which is pretty neat. He's also president of the Devil's General Council. Who knew the demons were so democratic and well organized? But here's the kicker, my favorite fact about Adramelech. He is the governor of the Devil's Wardrobe. Tell me you wouldn't want some fashion tips from the Devil's Wardrobe governor. Some seriously killer style on this dude. Probably has one of the original pairs of Satan shoes and everything. To ensure that he looks the part, he takes on the form of either a humanoid mule or a peacock. Or maybe sometimes he's a mule-peacock hybrid. All the above are probably true in some capacity. Be warned, Even if you do encounter a fabulously dressed mule peacock man, he's not to be approached. He's described as an enemy of God, greater in ambition, guile, and mischief than Satan, a fiend more cursed, a deeper hypocrite. And we hear a lot of bad things about Satan all the time, so if Andromeda is worse and more cursed than the big guy down there, then we're in for some trouble. Maybe that's why all those hardcore streetwear enthusiasts are so pure evil. They're just channeling Adremelech. Coming in at number 2, we've got Andros. Now we're getting into some hardcore ones. Sure, we started with some fallen angels who might have a violent tendency or two or compel people to act in ways that contradict their morals, but that's all just part of life, right? Andros is straight up evil. He is powerful, deadly evil. The Grand Marquis of Hell, 63rd of the 72 Spirits of Solomon, and commanding 30 legions of demons. Boom. If Andros likes somebody, he teaches them to kill their enemies, masters, and servants. Yeah, all 3 categories. He is a bringer of bloodbath and brings them often. Nobody escapes when he's around. To make matters worse, he also gets a kick out of creating bad situations. Sowing discord among people is a chief interest, and trouble seems to follow him wherever he goes. It's hard to avoid him too, as he does take many forms and can really mess up your day if you're not ready. See, usually magicians look to summon Andros in order to gain some of his power, but he's not easily handled. He will often kill the very people who summoned him if they're not prepared for his arrival. Then he's just free to roam around with his owl head and crazy sword, murdering to his heart's content. Not great. Usually he looks sort of human, with an owl or raven head riding a dark wolf. Very majestic, very cool, very dangerous. Seriously, watch yourself if you even catch a whiff of Andros activity. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Somebody told me he's got a devil set aside, but I'm not really sure what to make about that. There's also talk of Beelzebub being pretty wicked with the guitar and him stealing a whole lot of souls with it. This is all just hearsay, mind you, so take it with a grain of salt. However, the mythical Beelzebub, famous fallen angel, does have a lot written about him in religious and historical texts. His name means Lord of the Flies, and he rules over those nasty little buggers down in hell. A third fallen angel after Lucifer and Leviathan, Beelzebub has a lot of sway in the lake of fire. He's Lucifer's chief lieutenant and wears that title with pride. And speaking of pride, he's also the demon of pride. Also gluttony, also the prince of false gods. Witches love him, as they often mention him as an object of desire, and Beelzebub is a name that popped up quite a bit during the Salem witch trials. His presence is everywhere, and many folks blame him for all sorts of demonic possessions throughout history. Just an absolute all-star when it comes to demonic activities. No wonder he's referenced so much in literature, music, movies, and more. Boy, howdy. Who knew angels could commit to such hard pivots? There are more of these than I originally thought, especially when you delve a little deeper. Makes me wonder what the angels who are still currently being angelic are up to. Coming at number 5, we've got Armaros. Have you ever watched someone fall in love with the idea of something? Like a high schooler going head over heels for their crush without actually knowing all that much about them, let alone actually talking to them? Or maybe someone falling victim to the never meet your heroes cliche, where they develop some sort of parasocial relationship with someone and then find out what they're really like. I suppose this kind of thing happens even more than ever with the way people present themselves in online spaces, but it's been happening for ages. There's no avoiding the tragicomic classics when it comes to people and the stories they get caught up in. Although one would think that angels might know better. Enter Armaros. Sounds kind of like amorous, which kind of makes sense as I continue to explain what I'm talking about. This is an angel who is a friend of Enoch. One day Enoch came to hang with Armaros and began to describe what humans are like. Their forms, the way they acted and reacted, the things they believed in, the works. And although Armaros had never met a human, he began to fall in love with them, or the idea of them. He, like so many other watchers, decided to descend to Earth in order to be with the humans. Whether this was out of pure love, or lust, or some combination of the two with many other factors, we may never know. But down he went, which was the beginning of the end. Given his name, which means accursed one, he was lost. Armaros' voice was taken from him as well, leaving him unable to pronounce words as he once did. And there he languished, no longer an angel, forced to live beneath the humans that had entranced and tempted him so. He is the angel of undeath, undoing and taught many things to the humans. He introduced them to methods used to counter magic users, and in doing so sped up the advancement of corrupt societies. Destruction was wrought through his lessons, and he made it so humans were even more prideful and powerful than before. All because he had heard about humans and dreamt up a version of them in his angelic head. So let this be a lesson to all of you chronically online folks out there. Project a bunch of stuff onto someone you don't know and you could end up literally being cast out of your home and down into hell. Keep that in mind. Coming in number 4, we've got Tamiel. When a name shows up in multiple popular creepy TV shows, you can probably assume there's some spookiness to its owner. In the case of Tamiel, we can see why almost immediately. Featured in both The Walking Dead and Supernatural, this angel has some star power, and it doesn't stop at star power, he's got some crazy other powers too. He was once an angel up in heaven, of course, with all of the divine providence that comes along with that. However, that wasn't quite enough, and Tamiel made his way down to Earth and eventually to the underworld itself. There he became known as the Angel of the Unseen. Tamiel will take a human and put them into a dreamlike state where they remain for extended periods of time. In this dream, humans will experience their personal idea of heaven. Over thousands of years, this angel would do this to many different humans, often under the guise of another. He took on many different names during this process, slyly hiding his identity from those who may recognize him. The reason for these covert operations is largely unknown, but I'm sure you can fire some guesses down in the comments. It wasn't only dreamy heavens that Tamiel gave to humans though. He also taught them many things considered taboo at the time. Famed for his teachings of astrology, he gave humans the means with which to decode the stars above them and apply their movements to their lives. A little less popular, teaching the wicked strikes of spirits and demons to children. So if your kids are talking about how angels and demons are terrifying and maybe how they'd like to be just like them, you can blame this angel. He's also a teacher of the strikes of the embryo in the womb, and you can figure that one out on your own. So among Christians, he's got a lot of reasons to be unpopular. Overall, this is a very zealous teacher who is handing out knowledge that folks might not be super happy about in the long run. Plus, getting put into a dream coma might be nice for you, but it's probably not ideal for your immortal soul. Huh? Coming in number 3, we've got Penemu. Knowledge is power, that's for sure, but it can also cause plenty of problems, as we can see while looking at literally any point in history. And who can we blame for all of this? Why, Penemu, of course, the fallen scribe, angel of the written word, curer of stupidity in man and revealer of secret wisdom, a Prometheus in a different body. What an angel. It's too bad all these things didn't end up producing a net good for the world, or it could have been wicked. Oh well, you win some, you lose some. Penemu is another fallen angel who was once a watcher. Wanting to provide humans with all sorts of forbidden knowledge, they did just that. Descending to Earth with ink and paper in hand, Penemu taught people how to read and write, and while doing so purged a good deal of stupidity from the world. Unfortunately, the proliferation of written communication created an environment where stupidity could thrive if left unchecked. Should've saw that one coming. If all sorts of skilled and careful writers get together and discuss, new and useful ideas may be born. If essentially everyone on Earth has access to all of these writings and the ability to give their 10 cents, oh boy. So while the intentions were good, the execution wasn't so great. And the fallen angel Penemu doomed us to scrolling endlessly on Twitter, getting into arguments with distant family over Facebook, and of course, reading comments on YouTube. Coming in number 2, we've got the 5 Satans. Okay, this one seems weird to put in a top 5 list, but hear me out. There are 5 fallen angels who are said to have tempted their compatriots into feeling lust and desire towards humans. For this grave infraction, they will forever be known as the 5 Satans. Yekon, Asbiel, Gadriel, Kazde, and the previously mentioned Penemu were all responsible for this. In doing so, they doomed humanity to a horrible flood and split the heavens in twain. The angels who remained on the side of God fought against their brethren who went down to earth, and nothing has ever been the same. Each of the 5 Satans played their part in corrupting and swaying others away from their predetermined path, and in doing so, they truly earned their fallen angel titles. Condemned and sent down to hell, these 5 are full of hatred and temptation. And what a name for that group too, eh? 5 Satans. It's a pretty wicked way to be referred to. And finally at number 1, we've got Kokabiel. And one more for good measure, right? This fallen angel is known as the Angel of the Stars, which sounds lovely, right? And mostly it is. The thing about Kokabiel is that there is a divide as to whether he could be an angel or a demon. Could be a little bit of column A, could be a little bit of column B. Or maybe one and not the other. I don't know. That's what makes this potential demon so spooky. At any moment it could be revealed whether you can trust him or not, whether he has the order of the cosmos in mind while acting. Terrifying in its vagueness, that's for sure. If we're going to assume that Kokabiel did indeed fall though, we can see that he does indeed have control over some 365,000 spirits in the underworld. That's enough to drown really any other army, and we can probably assume that number's growing by the day. People die and disappear, but their spirits stay in the underworld forever. It's a little darker of a note than I anticipated, but we'll roll with it. Oh man, oh man. Someday we'll all be demons, I guess. Who's to say that we aren't already? What's that comic strip with the two people in the grocery store again? In hell there's relief and utter helplessness. Here our actions have consequences for both ourselves and others. Surely this is worse? A classic. Take that one to heart, why don't you?